Welcome. Thank you for joining us for this portion of Cultivating Conservation for Maryland and Delaware's Small and Historically Underserved Farmers. My name is Margaret Todd. I am a Senior Legal Research Associate with the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Law, Agriculture Law Education Initiative. Today, we'll be covering topics related to NRCS program eligibility and contract requirements. The Agriculture Law Education Initiative is a partnership of the Francis King Carey School of Law at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources at the University of Maryland, College Park, and the School of Agriculture and Natural Sciences at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. ALEI is an initiative of the University of Maryland Empowering the State, a strategic alliance between UMB and UMCP and UMES, created in 2012 to significantly expand research collaboration, business development, and student opportunities at all three universities related to agricultural businesses in the state of Maryland. You can find more about our program at www.umaglaw.org and follow us on social media. A quick disclaimer before we get into today's presentation. This presentation is intended to provide general information and should not be construed as providing legal advice. It should not be cited or relied upon as legal authority. State laws vary, and any attempt made to discuss laws of states other than Maryland is for general information and to help the viewer better understand Maryland law. For advice about how these issues might apply to your individual situation, please consult an attorney. Okay, so in this presentation, we will be covering knowing what you need to know. Navigating the network of conservation funding can be daunting. And so our hope is that this legal education will equal some empowerment for you as you navigate the different programs and what you may be interested or eligible to apply for. So we're going to talk about who is eligible and who you need to talk to, what you will be agreeing to, or the fine print, when you enter into an NRCS contract, and what the process will be like, and how to stay in compliance with NRCS contracts. So let's start with the eligibility requirements. Eligibility first starts with the type of farmer. The Farm Bill includes provisions that address the unique circumstances and concerns of socially disadvantaged, beginning, limited resource, and veteran farmers and ranchers, which are typically referred to as historically underserved producers, or HUPs for short. USDA offers HUPs, incentives, and program enhancements. For example, for the EQIP program, increased payment rates and advanced payments of up to 50% are available to HUP participants. All participants that are farmers must be actively engaged in farming. So all participants in programs subject to payment eligibility and payment limitation requirements must submit to the USDA two completed forms. The first is known as the CCC 901A, or the members' information, that identifies the participating persons and or entities and their interest share in the operation. The second form, the CCC 902, is the farm operating plan, identifies the nature of each person's or entity's stake, that is, what capital, land, equipment, active personal labor, or active personal management has contributed in the operation. So some more about historically underserved producers. In this instance, socially disadvantaged means an individual or entity who is a member of a socially disadvantaged group. A socially disadvantaged group is a group whose members have been subject to racial or ethnic prejudice because of their identity as members of a group without regard to their individual qualities. This could include American Indians, Alaskan Natives, Asians, African Americans, Native Hawaiians or other Pacific Islanders, and Latino and Hispanic growers. A beginning farmer means a participant who has not operated a farm or ranch, or who has operated a farm or ranch for not more than 10 consecutive years, and who will materially and substantially participate in the operation of the farm or ranch. Material and substantial participation requires that the individual provide substantial day-to-day labor and management of the farm or ranch, consistent with the practices in the county or state where the farm is located. Limited resource farmer or rancher means a participant with direct or indirect gross farm sales not more than the current index value in each of the previous 2 years, and who has a total household income at or below the national poverty level for a family of 4, or, this is one of these two options, less than 50% of county median household income in each of the previous 2 years. Now, that's a lot of information and potentially very confusing, but thankfully there is an online tool available from USDA, and the link is provided here on the slide and in your materials that you have access to, that allows you to go to the webpage, use the tool where you can identify which county your farm is located in, and that will, you enter some information in about your operation and your household income, and that will tell you whether or not you qualify as a limited resource farmer or rancher for your location. And finally, veteran farmer means a participant who served in the United States Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, or Coast Guard, including the reserve component thereof, was released from service under conditions other than dishonorable, and also satisfies one of the following: someone who has not operated a farm or ranch, or who has operated a farm or ranch for not more than 10 years, or who first obtained status as a veteran during the most recent 10-year period. So that sums up what historically underserved producer categories are. So who is eligible? The first thing you want to do is you want to start at your local FSA office or your Farm Service Agency office by making an appointment and having all the required documents that you need to see if you're eligible to participate in an NRCS program. First, you need a proof of your identity. So that could be a driver's license, it could be a social security card, it could be an ID card, and your farm's federal tax identification number, or your EIN. You need proof of control of the land, that is your farm or ranch. So that can be in the form of a deed, a lease, or a rental agreement, etc., things like that. You will also need a map and a legal description of the parcels intended to be enrolled in a USDA program. And you need the farm number that runs with the land, not the farmer. If you're unsure if the parcel that you have already has a farm number, the FSA staff can locate the farm parcel through the county GIS system and check to see if it already has a farm number. If there's no farm number currently associated with your parcel of land, that's okay. The FSA can issue a new farm number. In order to get a new farm number, you will have to provide proof of agricultural production. Another component that you will need to be eligible to participate in NRCS programs is a soil conservation and water quality plan. This is a plan that you can usually get free of charge from your local soil conservation district by reaching out to your soil conservation district office, and your local representative will evaluate the soil, water, air, plant, and animal resources on your property and offer several alternatives or options to address the resource conditions and concerns on your property. This could also include, this customized plan will usually include photos or maps of your farm, list of the management decisions that you come up with collaboratively about how you want to manage your operation, explanations of how to carry out those decisions and how you intend to carry out those decisions, and a plan for the operation and maintenance of those practices. NRCS will have to sign off on your approved soil conservation and water quality plan. Now, oftentimes, soil conservation and water quality plans are typically voluntary. And so you might have heard about this option before. It is not a requirement under state law, but it is required for most participation in most conservation programs. Another component of eligibility is limitations on adjusted gross income and payments. So there are adjusted gross income or AGI limits for most NRCS programs. This is established as part of the Farm Bill. The most recent Farm Bill was passed in 2018. So as of today, in 2024, the AGI limit remains at $900,000 per year. Participants in programs subject to the AGI rules must certify their eligibility to receive program benefits. So if an applicant exceeds the AGI limit, he or she can participate in a program, but they won't be eligible for the federal payments. There are also payment limitations for each NRCS program based on the type of program you want to participate in. So each member of an entity or beneficiaries of trust will have to complete the AGI form and meet the limitation. If any one person exceeds the limit, the entity itself can still qualify, and the member's share that exceeds the AGI limit will be reduced from the total payment amount. Each member of a joint operation, where members need not have a common family relation or lineage, is treated separately and individually for purposes of determining eligibility and payment limits. Thus, a partnership's potential payment limit is equal to the number of qualifying members, plus any special designees, such as spouses, times the individual payment limit. However, no income cap for state programs, so there's potentially other options as well. And furthermore, under the 2018 Farm Bill, the definition of family member has been extended to include first cousins, nieces, and nephews. It's also important to note that because NRCS programs are federal programs, a farmer is ineligible for USDA program benefits if they are engaged in controlled substance activities. For example, that would include illegally growing marijuana or unauthorized hemp production. So next we will cover what are you signing, understanding the fine print of your NRCS contract. The conservation program contract will have multiple parts. For example, with EQIP, you'll have the application, the appendix, and a conservation plan. Farmers should know exactly what they are committing themselves to before they sign this agreement. And be sure after you sign it to retain a copy of all 3 contract documents. So we do provide a link to a conservation program application, so you can review it in advance and get a chance to read through it and fully understand what you need to submit in order to apply to participate in a USDA NRCS program. So by signing, you agree to comply with all the reference documents. So that's the application, the appendix, and the conservation plan. Multiple people can sign up for different percentages of the share of program payments. Agents will do their best to explain the contracts at the time that the farmer or participant comes in to ask questions about it. But ultimately, it's up to the producer or the landowner, or both, to read all the terms and fully understand what the provisions are before they sign the agreements. Producers and landowners will get the documents to review in advance and then should decide whether they want to continue to sign up. They are also publicly available. And you'll have to acknowledge that you've received all documents in advance to review and fully understand the terms when you sign the agreements. So it's important to ask questions. If they want to change something in their implementation, for instance, if you want to change something in your implementation for the program, talk to your FSA or NRCS agents first. Once you've signed the contract, the agents have little flexibility to fix the problem, particularly if you don't talk about it first. For example, if you sign up for EQIP, an EQIP program, you have an obligated contract before. You need to have an obligated contract before doing any work associated with the EQIP agreement. Any work that's done before the contract takes effect is not eligible for fund reimbursement. When you fill out an EQIP application, all applications are ranked and competed against each other and other applicants for funding. So just because you sign it or submit your application doesn't mean you'll get funding. You must wait to get that approval letter from NRCS before you encumber or make any expenses or purchases pursuant to the EQIP implementation. Another important thing to remember is that for these programs, the majority of the pertinent information will be located in the appendix of the contract. So reading the appendix very fully and asking any questions you have about the terms that are laid out in the appendix, which usually includes a lot of the program implementation requirements. So the practices that you agree to implement and maintain as part of that contract will be included in the appendix section of the contract. So do you understand when and how you will get the funding? Those are important. That's an important question to ask yourself before you sign your contract. What will you have to show to be reimbursed? For example, will you need to retain certification of certain installation or receipts for certain purchases? Make sure you read those terms and you keep all the necessary documentation so you can be reimbursed in a timely manner. And how long will it take to get the funding after you've applied for reimbursement? Will it be months, weeks, or at a set time? These are important questions to ask yourself before you sign the contract so that you're fully understanding the repayment schedule. And again, if there's ever questions or doubts, ask. Feel free to ask the FSA and NRCS agents. They are there to help you. So don't assume that you know the answers, which could cause potentially cash flow issues in the future. Most of the time, the appendix to the contract agreement will include provisions related to protections for highly erodible lands and wetlands. Farmers must agree that they will not produce an agricultural commodity on highly erodible lands without a conservation system, plant an agricultural commodity on a converted wetland, and they won't convert a wetland to make possible production of an agricultural commodity. So once you sign the agreement, it's important to stay in compliance. And in order to stay in compliance, it's really important that you understand the contract and consider the what ifs. What if something goes wrong? Who is responsible for maintenance of those practices? And very importantly, what happens if the land is sold in the middle before the contract term is complete? So to avoid a contract termination, which would require a refunding of all the payments received and potentially having to pay some liquidated damages, the new owner or operator of any sold property that is under an NRCS contract must agree to assume the program contract and continue or satisfy the contract terms. This can be accomplished, but you have to be sure that during the land transfer process, the selling of the property, it's clearly communicated the requirements of the contract, the NRCS contract for maintenance and standards and reporting, and that the new owner must take on responsibility and assume the contract with NRCS. Otherwise, the original contractor that is selling the property would again have to be responsible for paying and read back all payments received and potentially have additional damages for terminating the contract. So avoiding noncompliance is very important. Contract violations, or also known as noncompliance, occur when a participant fails to adhere to the terms and conditions of the contract. In other words, everything that's laid out in the appendix of the contract and the application where you enter all of your information about who you are, what your operation is, what your AGI is, your level of activity in managing the operation, and being substantially involved in the agricultural operation. All of those things are attestations and actions that the participant agrees to. So you have to fully understand those terms and conditions. And so non-compliance can look like the participant fails to complete the conservation practices as scheduled in the contract. There might be a timeline associated with the contract, so it's important to understand when you need to get things accomplished. Participant needs to complete the practice usually within 12 months of the contract being obligated. Another way of non-compliance could be the participant loses control of the land under the contract, and the new owner does not assume the contract. Or a conservation practice or activity fails within the lifespan and prior to the contract expiration. Or the participant fails to meet other contractual provisions outlined in the contract. So if there's ever an instance where non-compliance comes up or it's anticipated that non-compliance may occur, farmers can work with their local NRCS office to modify their contract before a violation occurs. Communication is vital for this to be possible, though. If you suspect that you're going to reach non-compliance with an NRCS contract that you're obligated under, go to your NRCS office and talk with them right away. And talk with them and see if they can work with you to adjust the terms or offer an extension. Because NRCS may provide a reasonable time, not to exceed 12 months, as determined by the state conservation, for the participant to correct a violation before facing a contract termination. However, this has to be done before the end of the contract term. And so communication, again, is vital for this to be a possible option. If you wait too long and non-compliance is reached and they don't hear anything from you, their hands may be tied and they may be forced to say that non-compliance has been reached and the contract will be terminated, in which case, as mentioned before, a full refund of all payments received would be required and potentially liquidated damages. So quickly, we'll go over understanding the process, a scenario to walk through what this whole thing might look like. So we have a beginning farmer, Sam, who's interested in funding for a high tunnel or hoop house. To start this off and explore what are the options for NRCS funding that get this high tunnel for the beginning farmer, Sam will go to the local service center and discuss plans with an NRCS conservation planner. Sam will find out what NRCS programs are offering to fund this type of project, talk about what the options are. Since Sam has never been through the process before, the next stop will have to be to the FSA office, the Farm Service Agency, to establish farms records. Sam submits all of the information that was laid out before in the previous slides about control of the land, the farmer's identification, the farm number, and other required documents potentially about the agricultural production on the operation. And wonderfully is found eligible. So now what? A conservation planner will work with Sam to identify any resource concerns on the property. Sam will complete the conservation program application, and NRCS will rank the applications received. So annual program schedules do impact when ranking occurs. So asking that from the NRCS agent is a good idea when you go in. And then ranking criteria will usually include priority natural resource concerns. Again, that information will be available from the NRCS agent at the time that you go in to discuss what your options are and fill out the application. So after the ranking period closes and the applications are selected for funding, successful applicants like Sam will be notified of their application status by mail. If they're approved, usually they find out between 4 and 14 months. Then Sam will call the NRCS office after receiving that notification to make an appointment to develop their plan and their contract. So what now? If a project needs design, which might happen for a coop house or some other construction, the NRCS will provide all the practical or practice specifications, designs, and other necessary guidance to install the planned practices. This can be pretty time intensive, possibly depending on the size of the project. High tunnels don't need to be designed, but the specs will need to be acceptable to NRCS before the hoop house equipment or kit is purchased. After the installation, NRCS will come out to inspect the high tunnel to ensure that everything was installed correctly. And after NRCS certifies that the practice was installed correctly and successfully, SAM will sign a payment application, which will then be processed by NRCS so that funds can be directly deposited into SAM's account. There will be a flat payment rate per square foot of a project. However, HUPs, those historically underserved producers, may be eligible for a higher payment rate and higher payment cap. For some programs, NRCS is unable to give funds up front, but for other programs, like the EQIP program, a 50% advance payment may be available for the purchase of the materials or services needed for practice installation. Those funds must be used within 90 days of receipt. So, walking through that process, that might sound really quite simple, but it can be a lengthy process. So taking it one step at a time, going in to talk to the NRCS agents to really get a sense of what are the practices or programs that would be a good fit for your particular operation is a good place to start. Having that conversation, exploring what your options are, and so you do fill out the appropriate application. Going to the FSA office and making sure that you know that your farm has a farm number so that you're eligible to apply, and filling out your application with all the information that proves your eligibility, as we discussed earlier in this presentation. After your application is submitted, it'll be ranked, and the decision on whether your application is approved will be mailed to the applicant directly. Just when you get the approval, I will note, just as I mentioned before, getting the approval letter does not mean you have the okay to go out and make those purchases. You have to wait until the contract itself is fully executed and finalized by NRCS before you can actually go out and make those purchases. So you get the approval, you go in, you develop your conservation plan and work out those practice implementation or installation guidelines and timelines. As I said before, that will probably be laid out in the appendix portion of the contract. You review all those terms very carefully with yourself, your business partners. If you have questions, you take it to the NRCS agents to help them explain to you fully what each of those components, those maintenance requirements potentially means for you before you sign that contract and get your actual authorization letter that you can go ahead and make expenses for reimbursement to start your practice and implementation and installation. So yeah, I hope this presentation was helpful to you to get a better sense of what the eligibility requirements are for NRCS program contracts, how historically underserved producers are defined and categorized, because if those producers are potentially eligible for advance payments or higher caps on their projects, and why contract compliance is so important, and how you can go about and making sure that communication is open with your NRCS agents. Non-compliance can be highly expensive, that it would require potentially a contract termination that would mean a full refund of all payments received and potential liquidated damages. There are ways to avoid non-compliance by going to your NRCS agent in advance to negotiate and get an extension of up to 1 year at the NRCS discretion, but only up to a certain point. You have to go in early before their hands are tied. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email. Again, my name is Margaret Todd. I go by Megan though. So Megan Todd, my email address is MARKRTOD as in David, D as in David, at law.umaryland.edu.